Hey everyone, welcome back to the Pac South podcast yet again. A new week, more coach firings. Just jumping right into it because the athletic departments decided to do it before we could even get out of Saturday, it felt like. James Franklin immediately let go after that game on Saturday. Penn State starts 3-0. Next thing you know, they're 3-3 with two bad losses. Um, what's going on in college football, Pat? I mean, we'll get to more coaches later, but James Franklin, obviously the big one. What's happening up there at Penn State?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, especially in this NIL era where you have a lot more booster involvement, you have, let's say, companies who are invested in the programs throwing their weight around a little bit easier and a little bit more. It seems almost like coaches are getting a little bit of a quicker hook, you know? James Franklin's a guy who, yes, he never really won the big game and he struggled to get Penn State over that hump, but he had really strong success at Penn State, particularly recruiting. I mean, just look at how many guys are decommitting from Penn State now as a result of him getting fired. And he was really having his first down season in a while. It's obviously not going to get better from here with Drew Aller being out for the year, but it's a little surprising that they decided to do it mid-season. I understand the logic of you did not expect to be even remotely in the same ballpark as UCLA or Northwestern, but firing a guy who's had so much, success at your program mid-year. It's not like they were bad last year. They were a Drew Aller interception away from the national title game. It's a little bit surprising, I think. What are your thoughts on James Franklin?
Yeah, I mean, look, I really like James Franklin and what he's done at Penn State. He's built a really good program and brought them out of kind of like the dark days. People don't really remember it now, but I mean, when James Franklin took over, I forget it was Bill O'Brien, I do believe, was at Penn State. He had the brutal job of kind of maneuvering through the end of Paterno, the Sandusky days. So the athletic department, especially the football program at Penn State, was not in a very great place with O'Brien and then over to Franklin. Franklin was able to pull them up and really build them into a top 10 consistently program. He just didn't win the big one. And after an amount of time, you kind of get, tired of just being right there on the edge. You want to go ahead and win it. And he just never got there. And clearly, Penn State alumni and sounds like Adidas may have also had
Yeah.
a hand in it. And they were just like, this is going to go backwards before it will go even further forward. And I guess that they just decide that now is the time, which then leads to, you know, who's the replacement going to be? You've had a lot of coaches already be fired this year. Probably in Penn State's case, they're going to go poach a guy.
For
I
sure.
believe a certain gentleman who may have relation to Marlboro may be the number one target. Do you think Bloomington can hang on to their guy? I mean, he's done amazing things in a year and a half, but he's definitely going to be the big name this offseason.
Yeah, I think Sig is going to be the really hot name on the coaching cycle for great reasons. However, I think shockingly, he's going to stay at Indiana, especially when you look at, let's say, the way he can be viewed in the future at a
Mhm.
program like Indiana versus a program like Penn State. If he keeps doing what he's doing at Indiana, regardless of winning a national championship, but making them relevant in a very, very good football team, I mean, shoot, they're probably going to name the field after him, build him a
Yeah.
statue. Penn State, if he's doing what James Franklin did and putting a really good team out there, winning 10 games consistently, but not winning a national championship, he's going to be right back into this same boat that Franklin was in. Um, so I think Sig is actually probably, I think, going to stay in Bloomington. I think a name to keep an eye on with Penn State is Matt Rule. He's a Pennsylvania guy, turned around Temple I mean, that feels like eons ago, but before he
Yes.
got that Baylor job, he turned Temple into a pretty respectable program in the American. Dylan Raiola still has a year of eligibility if he decides to transfer to Penn State with Matt Rule in this scenario. So I think he's a guy to keep an eye on. I know I've seen some buzz about Penn State wanting to reach out to Marcus Freeman, the Notre Dame coach, but I don't think he's going to leave ND and what he's built there to essentially start over at Penn State. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. I think Penn State's really going to be like, as of right now, the big domino in terms of job availability. It's easily the best job on the market right now, or the biggest profile job. So I think whoever takes the Penn State job and whatever money they get is going to set the stage for further coaching hires down the line as well.
Yeah, very true. So Penn State really shaking up the job market this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another coach that we can't forget with all the madness,
Probably should.
Trent Dilfer out of Alabama Birmingham has also hit the chop block. Honestly, never really worked. I felt like for the Blazers and Dilfer, I mean, it was kind of a fun hire, but then you go down the line and you go, oh, Trent Dilfer's at UAB. So I feel like that just kind of sums up what that program is able to do, and like that program has been on just a roller coaster ride the last
Yeah.
15 years. Cutting football, bringing football back, being really good, not good, really good again, and now you're firing your coach in week 7. Um, are the Blazers just going to continue to ride this, or what do you see out of UAB? Because I mean, historically, they have some good success, and they're in a very football-rich environment. You have teams of the same caliber: South Alabama, Troy, just to name a couple in the same state.
Mm-hmm.
They're not what they normally are, so the door's open for UAB.
Yeah, I think UAB has the potential to be a decent American program. Because they are in the American Conference now. That helps in terms of attracting potential coaches, helps in terms of recruiting, helps in terms of NIL revenue that you can give to these kids. So I think it is a good job. But like you said, I have no idea why they hired Trent Dilfer for it when they did. It didn't really make sense when they did it. Didn't really make sense the entire time he was there. Last year, it kind of seemed like he didn't really care too much about the team, about the program. And I think a lot of UAB fans wanted him fired after the season last year, so it's not really a huge surprise to see him go. It was essentially a disaster in terms of his tenure there. That's, I guess, kind of like the cautionary tale of hiring guys like Trent Dilfer that are these celebrity names. I know he coached high school, but have no real sort of college level experience. I don't know. It can go wrong so easily and so quickly, especially if they're not invested in the program. Bill Belichick. And we're kind of seeing, yes, with NIL and having a GM, you might not have to recruit as much, but you still have to coach. You still have to have the right systems in place. I just don't think Dilfer did.
Yeah, no, I think that that's probably a great read on the UAB program. I'd like to see them make a good hire to bring that program back and kind of have that really good third team in the state of Alabama again. Because, I mean, historically there has been. There's been, Auburn, Alabama are playing really good football typically. And then there's usually a group of 5, group of 6 team that's not at the same caliber, but making noise behind them. So hopefully they can make a hire. I think that if this coach wanted to, he could go to a program like this and turn around and maybe build his stature back up, and that's Sam Pittman.
Ooh,
I think that
okay.
that could work, keeping his roots in the South. I have a feeling he's going to go the coordinator route, but just as we begin to speculate, which is crazy, we're in week 7, we're speculating who's going where next. But staying on the speculation route, you have 2 other schools that may be joining this long list now. One as early as this weekend, Billy Napier. We are fully on Billy watch again. this weekend. Reports have come out that possibly win or lose Saturday, Napier will be out, which will be just another uh, program, and in this case, an SEC big time program to fire their coach early. And then you mentioned Bill Belichick before. Things are very rocky in Chapel Hill. I just don't know how you bring back a guy like that in year two. And to also reiterate on something you said, I'm just stacking it all up. So we're gonna get a pancake here in a minute. Um, you know, People need to be kind of wary of the like celebrity coach names. Like you mentioned that Trent Dilfer didn't work at UAB. Bill Belichick, they tried to do that. You know, at North Carolina, and North Carolina did that before with Mac Brown. Of course, he had the history there, so kind of a 50-50 ball. But John Gruden has said that he really wants to get back into coaching. He wants to go SEC. There's now 1, almost 2 confirmed uh, positions, and apparently his name's going to be in that. But will these universities jump for something like that? I feel like that could just be disastrous considering
Yeah,
his recent coaching past.
I agree, and I don't know how I ended up on this side of X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, but over the past few weeks, I have firmly wound up on Hogs Twitter. Getting a lot of Arkansas tweets for some reason, and a lot of the fan base wants them to hire John Gruden, which I think would be a really, really poor decision. Again, a guy who's never coached in college. Yes, he can probably generate donor interest and beef up an NIL program, but just because you have NIL money doesn't necessarily translate to success. Just look at Florida; they have tons of money and they're still not winning. So I think if I'm Arkansas and if Florida does fire Billy Napier in the coming weeks, if I'm Scott Strickland, I'm looking for a guy like James Franklin, who's a proven winner, who can recruit, because Florida has really turned into a revolving door of coaches the past, we'll say, decade and a half since Urban Meyer left, and they need consistency. I think some people are probably kicking themselves a little bit for pushing Dan Mullen out the door as quickly as they did. Granted, allegedly he did stop recruiting, can't really do that, but he had some really successful seasons, one down year, and you kick him out and bring in Billy Napier, who's a hot name on the market, and it just totally blows up in your face and doesn't work. So I think it'll be interesting to see where those SEC teams go. But circling back to your point, I really hope teams do their homework and really think about it. Is this guy going to be a culture fit? Is this guy committed to success at this program, or is it going to be a stepping stone before they make these celebrity or big name hires?
Let me present this question to you as well. Is the SEC becoming so loaded on coaching names? I mean, you have Sarkisian, you have Venables, who's been a great coordinator at
Yeah,
Clemson with
really good
multiple
DC.
national titles. You have Kirby Smart, you have Kalen DeBoer taking Washington from nothing to a playoff team in 2 years. He inherits what Saban had. You continue to go down the list. You have Heupel, who continued what Scott Frost did at UCF, bringing that success to Tennessee, who was doing nothing. Clark Lee, who has built Vanderbilt up. So, like, you have all these, like, names building. How, as an outsider, can you join a conference like that? I feel like if you're Arkansas or Florida, to get these coaches, it almost might be better to poach from your conference, potentially a Lane Kiffin, depending with
Ooh,
Florida, or spending a little extra money on Clark Lee, getting him to move. But I mean, like, really, I think the only other school left is Kentucky with Mark Stoops, which
yeah.
that was a big hire for them at the time. I don't know what kind of coach they would be able to attract. So that would kind of probably be a younger guy, a coordinator. But if you're one of these bigger programs or you've had success recently, like, you want your guy, not a lot of coaches, I feel like, unless they're just chasing the money, are going to go, okay, I get, you know, maybe 6 wins here,
Mm-hmm.
but then I could go to, say, the Big 12, same amount of money, if not maybe a little less, but I'm in the playoff like
Yeah,
almost every year. So I feel like coaches are now going to be like look at this big picture of like the Big Ten and SEC are just meat grinders,
100%.
and they could be in and out of that job in 2 years, and then they're a coordinator for somewhere else. So like I feel like that's now more than ever becoming a big point of contention for these new jobs.
Yeah, and I think a name to kind of keep an eye on if Kentucky does come open is John Summerall. He's a Kentucky alum. I think that's the job he's kind of been holding out for a little bit. And if Kentucky does come open, I think he's all in, all over that. And I think he would actually be a pretty good hire for that program. But you're right. Like, what is stopping these up and coming guys who might not have proven it at the P5 level from going to the Big 12 and maybe taking a slight pay cut, but getting a much easier schedule instead of going to, granted, Sig's done a great job there, but a program like Indiana or a program like Arkansas that's kind of this mid tier to recently for Arkansas, bottomish feeder in a top heavy conference. And, if you're not winning 8, 9 games by year 2 or year 3, fans are going to get upset. They're going to start calling for your job when, you could be hanging out in, let's say, Dave Aranda gets fired, Waco, Texas, and winning 8 games a year, nobody's going to say boo to you. So,
Yeah, and I mean, just to prove the what do you call it, the how deep the conference is and how like hard it is to win and what fans expect. South Carolina, who's got their guy, and he said that he never wants to leave Columbia. I mean, you have fans calling for his head. I don't think that one happens this year, but I mean, if it's a disappointing year this year and a slow start next year, I mean,
hot seat.
you could see Shane Beamer possibly being out of Columbia. So I mean, it's just that much, and they were a fringe playoff team. They were just
Mm-hmm.
outside last season, making a really good bowl game. So, uh, yeah, SEC would not want a job there right now, but some people do, and you'll get bought out very handsomely. Uh, moving forward, it's a little bit different. We're going to stay on the negative stuff before we get exciting. A little bit different. So, past weeks we've done who's impressed. This week, only one who disappointed. Who is your disappointment this past weekend, Pat?
I'm going to go with a team that won their game, but played one of the ugliest. It wasn't just them, it was the team they were playing too, but one of the ugliest games I've watched all season. And really has called into question how is the rest of the season going to go, and that's LSU. LSU once again put in a really solid defensive performance. Their front seven was giving Lenora Sellers trouble all game. Now, part of that's probably due to South Carolina's poor offensive line play, but still, they held up their end of the bargain. The LSU offense did not. I mean, you go down and you fumble on the goal line, you throw a pick in the end zone on an RPO, and Nussmeier almost fumbled again when he was trying to QB sneak it in, and it's just sloppy, sloppy football. And that's one thing that I think we've seen consistently from LSU this year, regardless of if Garrett Nussmeier is fully healthy or not. They're just not a very efficient or a very clean playing football team. So I think they disappointed this week in not looking better, coming out of that bye, figuring out some of those issues that's sort of been plaguing them. And I think if they don't figure it out soon, I don't know, Brian Kelly could be getting onto one of those hot seat lists because fans are really pushing in this playoff era for LSU to be relevant in those kind of upper tier teams. And if you're going 8-4, 9-3 this year, I think fans are going to start getting a little bit antsy and start wondering, when are we going to see progress? When are we going to see kind of what we've been sold when Kelly was hired?
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I feel like Kelly is delivering on the product that he gave at Notre Dame. This is pretty similar Brian Kelly football. I mean, it's a pretty good defense in there. Offense has its moments, and then next thing you know, it flashes back. Of course, Kelly is very much leaning on his coordinators for the offensive side, but I just think this is Brian Kelly football. I mean, he's going to have one of those years where it all connects and it looks amazing, and then the next year you're sitting at, maybe 7-5, going, what happened? Um, but yes, LSU, very, very disappointing in their performance this year. I feel like they should be a lot more buttoned up, and going against a South Carolina team that is very lost on offense. You mentioned the offensive line play. Saw this week Lenore Sellers, 19 yards rushing from scrimmage on 22 carries. If you did the heat map, like on a soccer field, he had 894 yards covered.
Wow.
So 894 yards translates to 19 yards. South Carolina has fired their offensive line coach since this game, but a very, very awful stat to look at. Yeah, my disappointed team. This team did not win, nor have they won in a few weeks now. It's the Florida State Seminoles. I wasn't fully bought in going into this year, and even after the Bama game, and I knew I shouldn't have done it, but when they played, I believe it was East Texas A&M, and I forget the other team that they played, but they put up like 65 points in both games or more. I think 77 against East Texas A&M. And I was like, well, maybe this offense is going, like, to be able to score this many points, like, you still do need to have a good offense. And then they go into ACC play, given Miami's a very good team, but they were not in that game as much as the score indicates. And then losing to Pittsburgh and losing to the other team is escaping me, but I believe an even worse loss. Virginia, yes. Friday Night Lights. Yes, turns out Virginia may actually be good. Sorry, Cowboy fans. But either way, Florida State, after, the polls rocketed them up, which I thought that they should have been ranked. Definitely not that high. They continue to move out there in the top 10. And, next thing you know, we have yet another top 10 team at some point in the year, and they're already out within a couple weeks.
Yeah.
There's just no real consistency on that front, but especially in Florida State's case, they just haven't looked good. Mike Norvell, I don't know how his seat is not hotter. If I'm a Florida State fan, I think I would be calling for his head. I would have been calling for his head last year. And it kind of, I hate to put this chapter mark on it, but it seems like ever since the Jordan Travis injury, that program has not been the same. They were 2-10 last year. They played really bad football throughout the entire season. This year they've had moments, but they were the first 3 games of the year and against bad competition, and Alabama was not playing Alabama football like they are right now in the year. So yeah, I think Florida State needs a hard reset. They just have never really recovered from the injury or, the Orange Bowl against Georgia. They've just played bad football, especially in conference play. It's been 387 days since Florida State has won an all-coast conference, Atlantic Coast Conference game.
Shout out Cal.
It's really bad. Palo Alto's in the same conference. That's another school. I believe they were on interim coach this year, per GM Andrew Luck, who may be hired. Another Power 4 conference. But yeah, Florida State, bad. Very disappointed. They need to make changes immediately to get the program back on track.
I think one of the things that's kind of prevented them from firing Norvell is that buyout. After that run with Jordan Travis in 2023, he renegotiated his contract as the Bama job was coming open. FSU was worried that he might go leave them for that job, and his buyout, I want to say before January of this year, is $50 million. And that's not exactly something easy to cough up. Granted, Penn State, they settled on 50 mil with Franklin, but Franklin's is on the condition where if he finds another job, which I'm sure he will, that's reduced all the way down to, I want to say, 11 million. So I think it's the buyout that's really the big issue for FSU. But I agree, there definitely needs to be change in Tallahassee. I don't think Mike Norvell is the guy. Just watch his press conferences, and you can see it's kind of just whiny and complainy. Before we move on, I'll just give an honorable mention for disappointing teams. The one on my shirt, Iowa State. I blame myself. I bought them, and since I bought them, 2 losses in a row. But losing 2 NFL corners also can kind of contribute to that.
Yeah, well, hopefully the Cyclones can turn it around. I think that they can. It's like they have pieces in place there. It's just not really meshing right now. And Matt Campbell has been a much more competent head coach than Mike Norvell.
Yeah.
Day one, I was not a fan of that Norvell hire at Florida State. I think that 13-0 regular season, the stars just kind of aligned. And you had, Jordan Travis was an amazing playmaker. And Florida State fans, you can argue undefeated teams should make the playoff regardless, what have you. And, they had their entire defense sit out of the Orange Bowl. You look at the Georgia game. Georgia also had, I do believe, like 22 players sitting out, including, I think it was like 8 starters. So not as many starters as Florida State. But you can't use the argument when you're both sitting out about the same amount of players and you lose by 60. So I just think the stars aligned in that regular season, and that really got Norvell his job security that he's at now. But you remember the first couple of years, I believe it was a 6-7 start with what should have been a decent roster with Mike Norvell coming from, Memphis, which Norvell inherited. I forget the Memphis coach, but he inherited a good Memphis team and continued to win there.
Yeah. Justin Fuente,
yes. Fuente was able to build a decent little Tiger football program over there. Norvell kept it going, but just has not been able to build it up even further in the Atlantic Coast Conference. We'll head over to one more little football segment here. It is Holy War Week, and both teams are quite good this year. Utah with their 1 loss at home to Texas Tech. Texas Tech is for real this year. We were a little concerned just because of, they built up in the portal. Hadn't actually seen them play. They're legit. Utah with some portal pieces like Devin Dampier from New Mexico. Playing pretty good football for them. He's had some moments where it's been a little shaky. And then BYU, obviously, the quarterback situation was the big question mark going into the year. You lose your quarterback, 3 weeks before the season?
Yeah.
In only BYU fashion. But now they're sitting undefeated. So, you have a ranked versus ranked matchup. What do we like there? This is now a conference game. This is, I believe, the first time it's been a conference game in
last year.
Okay, before that. Okay, yes, this is the biggest game in 365 days for both programs. But yeah, what do we have here? Because they're both really good teams.
Yeah.
But yet, for as good a football as they've played, there's still some question marks, especially on the Utah side.
For sure. I'm starting to think I sold Utah a little bit earlier than I probably should have, given how unpredictable the Big 12 has proven to be this year. Even when I sold them, I said they still could make the Big 12 championship, and I think probably after last weekend. Yeah, exactly. Even after last weekend, beating Arizona State, granted without Sam Leavitt, the way that they did, I think that further kind of put them in that driver's seat position to be the team that gets to get blown out by Texas Tech and Dallas. But I don't know, this Utah team, I think we know defensively what they are. They're going to be a really good defense. Yes, they got blown out by Texas Tech, but that defense was hanging for the beginning portion of the game. It's just the fact that they had to keep going out there and going out there and going out there. They eventually wore down, and that's when Tech just kind of blew it out of proportion. Um, where I think their questions exist is with the offense. Like you said, Devin Dampier has played really well at some points, and he's also made some questionable decisions at some points. But that's kind of expected, getting a guy coming up from a lower level program in New Mexico playing Power 4 football. Um, with that being said, I think BYU actually has more questions because BYU is essentially the same build as Utah. I just don't think they're as good. They've got a really good defense, and yes, Bear Bachmeyer's played really well given the circumstances he came into. True freshman, wasn't supposed to play this year.
Yeah.
Then Retzlaff breaks the code of conduct at BYU, and congrats, you're the starter. He's done a really good job being thrust into that role. I just think it's a little bit of getting away with it in BYU's case. Like, they should have lost that game to Arizona this past weekend. I don't know how much of that you were able to watch, TJ, but Arizona kind of gave the game away in Arizona fashion, sort of since Jed Fish has left. And I don't know. I think this is a game where I'm not really sure what to expect from either team. I think either team could win. I think either team could blow the other team out. Um, but if I'm having to put my chips behind somebody, I have more confidence in Utah right now than I do in BYU.
Yeah, so I'll backtrack a little bit. To me, BYU, I don't think they have that many question marks. I think that that's just
Mm,
who they are.
okay.
I think that they've played pretty consistent. I don't think that there's any of those like, like he's just, sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not.
Mhm.
I think it's just simply like you have a guy who's going to be, consistently good, consistently bad, or a guy that's just like, you know, he'll lock in one play and then he's gone the rest of the drive. I think that's just BYU this year, and they've gotten away with it because when you look at their schedule, they have not had a hard schedule at all. And the fact that these games have been that close, I think is, I feel like that just shows the story. Because everyone they've played, I mean, their biggest win is, not counting Portland State, at home against Stanford, which the whole program is in transition. They were in transition last year with a full time coach. This year, they have a rental coach, and they're even more in transition. That's their best win of the season. I mean, they barely snuck by against Colorado. They did not deserve to win that game with how bad Colorado has been this year. They had a good win this past weekend. West Virginia, who is a dumpster fire, they beat them at home, which needed to be done. But then, like you say, they sneak by Arizona in a game they had no business winning. I wouldn't necessarily say it was because BYU just played worse than expected. I just think that's what they are.
Yeah.
So then the question going into this game is, what will Utah provide on offense? I think that both defenses are going to be about on the same level. They're going to give up a play here and there. Like, I wouldn't say anything like 50-yard touchdowns, but like 20-yard, 30-yard gains. Like, there'll be a few of those throughout the game. But for the most part, they're both pretty steady. I would be shocked if a team went over 24 points in this game. I think it's going to come down to, can Devin Dampier take care of the ball? He is a great playmaker when he's making smart decisions. He's been known to fumble it. He's been known to throw
Yeah.
a few picks in certain games. Um, can he make the plays with his arms and his legs? If they can, I wouldn't be worried if I'm a Utah fan. But the biggest game of the year, I believe he accounted for 3
Yep.
turnovers, and that was immediately the killer in the Texas Tech game. Other than that, they were in it. But when you start handing over turnovers, your defense gets tired. You start to wind down. So I think if Devin Dampier can, I almost want to say, dial it back in this game.
Mm,
I don't think he needs to do anything special. I just think he needs to be consistent because he's good enough as is. If
that's
that's the
fair.
case, I like the Utes here. And I think Utah, maybe this isn't their year. Texas Tech just looks so good.
They're very good.
But Devin Dampier is only a sophomore. He's got another year next year.
Mhm.
Continue to grow. It's tough with this portal era of college football to know what you're going to have year to year just because guys can move so much. You hold on to the key pieces, though. I think Utah is, you know, very, very good talking point for next season as a playoff team. So going going with the sweep in the Holy War, we'll switch over to baseball now. Um, we're already 2 games into the LCS, and both road teams are 2-0 up.
Mm-hmm.
Very shocking. The Mariners up over the Blue Jays, obviously, and then the Dodgers over the Brewers. I feel like the Dodgers over the Brewers, you could kind of see that one coming. But Toronto was red hot coming into this series with home field advantage against the Mariners, who just barely squeaked by in 15 innings uh, to win the division series. What are we expecting this to maintain? I mean, once you go up 2-0 in a series, especially on the road, you have to like your odds, right?
Yeah, definitely. I thought both of these series would probably be 1-1 heading back to the West Coast, just because, like you said, Toronto was red hot in that Yankee series. Granted, Seattle has a much better pitching staff than the Yankees do, but those bats were making great contact. They were seeing the ball well. For the most part, their pitching had been pretty solid in the Yankee series, and especially Milwaukee. Yes, they tried to kind of give that series to Chicago by losing 2 straight at Wrigley, but you see how good they were all year. I thought for sure they would win one at Miller. Um, I think we're trending towards yet again seeing the Dodgers in the World Series, and I don't know if that's good for baseball because the Dodgers are kind of becoming the face of spending a lot of money, but not actually spending a lot of money during the season that you're playing.
Yep.
And I think that's going to become a real sticking point when we see CBA negotiations coming up before the 2027 season. It's already come out. Don't be surprised if there's a lockout. I think the lockout's probably guaranteed if the Dodgers win the World Series again this year. So I don't know. I'm hoping that for the sake of competitiveness, Milwaukee can maybe steal these next 2 games in the NLCS, and then we have a real series on our hands. But I think in the ALCS, Seattle, they're in the driver's seat. I think it's going to be really hard for Toronto to overcome this 2-0 deficit, especially with the strength of the Mariners starting pitching.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you with the Mariners. I think if you're a Seattle fan, as I'm wearing a Mariners hat right now, going to Toronto, you knew that was going to be a tall task. It was, a real quick turnaround from game 5. I mean, that game finished, I want to say, right around midnight on the West
I was going
Coast.
to say that definitely not here.
And then they overnight flight that night. They get to sleep basically the whole day, and then you wake up the following. You're in Toronto. You're playing a game. 36 hours after you clinch your series. So very tall task, and they steal the game. I mean, that's the best way to describe Game 1. 3-2 win in Toronto. I can't remember every score line, but I do believe Toronto scored over 4 runs at least
They did.
in every game against the Yankees,
Mm-hmm.
and they only scored 5 in these 2 games combined. So the Mariners pitching staff really answered the call, and yeah, I mean the Mariners bats are waking up now. Cal Raleigh has been Cal Raleigh all season, but you get a guy like Julio Rodriguez who has been shaky at the end of the regular season and playoffs so far. He has a 3-run blast in game 2. So, I mean, Mariners got to be very happy. Next 3 games are at home. I was kind of calling a gentleman's sweep for Toronto coming into this one.
Wow.
And I feel like it almost might be the inverse.
Yeah.
So, Mariners in a great position. Dodgers, what more can you say? I feel like I've said this every time we've talked about baseball. It's the Dodgers in the playoffs. They find a way. Um, Milwaukee's a good club, but I just didn't like the matchup when I was looking at like the potentials earlier in the playoffs. And, you know, I think the Phillies were the biggest competition for the Dodgers matchup wise. And that series was what it was. It ended up being closer than I initially thought, but still was not as close as it should have been to me. Just did not feel like the Phillies, like while taking a game, just I don't know. It didn't feel like the Phillies, like the big Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, the big bat, like they
Yeah,
should have been commanding more. And I just didn't really see it. But maybe just because I was already going in with the mindset of I don't believe the Dodgers are out of the game until the game's over and they lose.
yeah,
I mean, that's just how good that team is. I mean, I think we are looking at an all West Coast World Series. I think it's just a matter of how long does it take us to get there.
I agree with
Uh,
you.
so, yeah. And, once you get to the World Series, Mariners, this would be their first trip in franchise history. So you never know. But the Dodgers, as I've said time and time again, have the experience. You can't beat the experience. My pick 'em, I did go with the Mariners just for fun, but you get down to it, I just don't know how it's not the Dodgers. So we'll see this time next week. We may still be playing baseball. You never know.
True.
Could get crazy, but I think if you're looking at Dodgers Mariners setup, I think I have to go with LA.
Mm.
And bad news for CBA fans everywhere. So, any final points for you on baseball?
I think the last thing I'll say, she made some great points, TJ, talking about how great the Dodgers are, the experience they have. But I just want to say, put it on record. I believe in Big Dumper. I believe in J Rod. I believe in Brian Wu. He's finally healthy. I believe in Logan Gilbert. My tridents are up. Let's go, M's. They're winning the World Series, baby.
I certainly hope so. We'll see. I will say here in Seattle, it was buzzing after the division series win. I believe we heard fireworks all night that night. So, very fun. I mean, this is kind of uncharted territory for the Mariners, and it's just kind of nice to see a new face in baseball, just in
For
general.
sure.
So we'll move forward to a well discussed topic, both on the podcast and sport media as a whole. It's the MLS. Um, we're here at Decision Day. That's this weekend. So figured we'd bring it up and talk a little bit about playoffs, our favorite North American soccer league.
Oh.
Oh, all right. It's getting little game three's in like an hour. So like it's going to get real big. So yeah, where were we? Lots of talking points going into the MLS season. Nashville just wins their first cup. They're sitting, I believe, in the 3-4 spot for the Eastern Conference. Of course, MLS, Eastern, Western Conference. But Nashville looks really good here at the end, winning their first cup, which is kind of shocking. They're a young club, but they've been pretty good like the whole way through. Hani Mukhtar has looked amazing for them year in and year out. Finally gets to raise it. Now they're going in with a lot of momentum into this playoff. Obviously, you have Inter Miami and a roster full of senior citizens who know how to win. Messi is just magic when he has the ball. Like, no matter what, like, you have your entire back line on him, which, of course, if you have your entire back line on him, there are still other options available for Inter Miami to score with. So, I mean, they're, right there as well in the conversation, regardless of what their form is going into the year, because that's one of the few clubs that can flip it just like that. You have West Coast teams, LAFC, Seattle Sounders. Sounders have looked amazing since the Club World Cup break when they got the experience playing against international clubs. LAFC always seems to play good soccer when we get to this time of year. I think that's just an LA thing because even the Galaxy, for as bad as they were, they finally decided to win some games to avoid the wooden spoon. So that would have been insane to go from the MLS to the wooden spoon. But yeah, MLS is a crazy league. I believe there's only 4 leagues in the world that end their year with playoffs.
Yeah.
MLS being one of them, which kind of helps build the parity to it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember the last time a 1 seed. I believe the Galaxy came in around a 7 last year.
Mhm.
I could be wrong. But yeah, I mean, you look at teams like around that 7 mark. You have Orlando City in the East, who years past has been very good. This year's a little bit of a step back, but they've kind of figured out they're scoring a little bit more. So I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces with the
Yeah.
MLS. Like, just it's kind of SEC football. It's any given Saturday. You don't know what you're going to get until you play Vanderbilt or DC United, in which case it's a win. And then every 10 years, they get Wayne Rooney or Diego Pavia, and then they're good. So that's kind of MLS for you. Pat, do you have anything that you want to see this weekend for Decision Day and then playoffs next month?
I have not watched a great deal of MLS this year. Um, most of my MLS watching has been limited to Charlotte FC, who's actually been pretty solid this year. I think they're kind of right in that same boat with, I think it's them, Nashville, and NYCFC, I want to say, who have kind of alternated with that like 3, 4, 5 group in the East. So I think that'll be a fun race to see how that shakes out, what positions they're going to fall into. And like you said, MLS is just so unpredictable. I feel like if we remember last year, NY Red Bulls had that like crazy run where they almost made it all the way to the finals. Actually, they might have made the finals. I don't know. Um,
I do believe they may have made the
yeah,
finals.
I think they made the finals last year, and they were like the 7 or 8 seed coming in. So you just got to get hot at the right time. It's kind of like playoff hockey. Whoever's hot, whoever has good defense or good goalie at that time has a really good chance at carrying it far. I guess for selfish reasons, so the city of Charlotte can get something to cheer about. I hope Charlotte FC makes a deep run. But realistically, I think probably either Seattle or I'm going to say Philly. I think Philly might take it home this year. Either Seattle or Philly are gonna make some noise.
Yeah, I mean, Philly, very shocking where they are in the table. I feel like for me, I did not have them, topping the Eastern
Mm-hmm.
Conference this year, which in your case with Charlotte FC, I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, you're getting 66 points with 3 more on the line this
Yeah,
weekend. You're having a decent year in the MLS. Um, but Charlotte wins, say everything holds, home field advantage, they win. They then have Philly, uh,
yeah,
and that could be one of those things where you're able to sneak up and take one there. So for your Charlotte FC potential right there, obviously you have also FC Cincinnati, who has
mm-hmm.
been just amazing since joining MLS. They were great in their final few years. USL, now they have their own soccer specific stadium in Cincinnati, and they just have never looked back. They
Yeah,
are a great club year in and year out, so they at least deserve that. And you never know. They haven't broken through with that, which is shocking. They're a team that they just make it in. A Dodgers without the championships lately, where they have so much experience that it's just going to eventually build up to the point where we just do this, and
yeah,
then they get the wins, and that's when the championships come. So never know. But yeah, so Vancouver, currently Thomas Mueller. They are topping the Western Conference. San Diego FC, shockingly, up there in the 2 seed. And then we have a Minnesota at 4, who would be hosting Seattle as everything stands now. So I think that'd be a brutal matchup for Minnesota to
Yeah.
take, just with the form Seattle has been in consistently over the last 3 months, obviously dropping a few here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I believe everything is pretty set. Eastern Conference is set. Um, we do have the play-in 8-9 seed FC Dallas, Real Salt Lake, Colorado, San Jose, all technically within reach. 41 points for FC Dallas, 38 points for San Jose. With your limited MLS knowledge, give me a team, or give me 2 teams right there. What do we want?
I'm gonna say FC Dallas, and you know what? Let's go with the underdogs. Let's put the Earthquakes in there.
Earthquakes. All right, I'm taking Rapids. I'm with you on FC Dallas. I'm taking the Rapids, so I think they're going to sneak in. For Decision Day, which of course then will lead us to our playoff matchups, we will talk a little bit more in depth on. But just thought it'd be fun to have a little impromptu MLS action. We'll be talking more about overseas soccer when we get to that point. This is the time of year, though. College football, U.S. sports are really, really diving into things.
Yeah.
Going back to college football, before we go to predictions, this has been a crazy first half of the year. What are the keys of just survival for the second half of the year? I wouldn't even say playoff teams, but let's just say those higher level bowl teams, eight win programs and above. What are the keys for them?
I think the biggest key has to be avoiding injury. Just look at how Oklahoma's season can potentially be derailed. John Mateer didn't look like himself last week against Texas. Remains to be seen how he'll look against South Carolina this weekend. But if you can keep your guys healthy, you have all the makings to have a successful season. And I think it's really important. Yes, the playoff era, you want your team to be in the playoffs, but let's not dilute successful seasons to just making the playoffs. Like a 9-win season, an 8-win season for some programs is phenomenal and should be celebrated. So I think stay healthy. And then second, this more so goes for, I guess, shaking out our playoff race. I think the American down the stretch is probably going to be the most interesting conference to watch. You've got your 3 teams at the top that are all still undefeated in conference play: Tulane, USF, Memphis, all really good. They all play.
What about the Navy?
Oh shoot, I did forget the Navy. I'm not really buying into the Navy. I guess we can see that from my statement there. But I think the American's going to be really fun down the stretch. I think it's good that we're going to have meaningful non-power conference football down the stretch, because hopefully it brings some eyeballs to a conference that has really improved its pedigree the past few years. So I think stay healthy, watch the American, and my last thing I'll say is make sure you got your NIL money ready, especially if you're one of those mid-tier teams that has a few guys who are looking good. So those are my 3, we'll say, takeaways to end the season for some of these teams.
Very fair. Yes, the American Conference, I feel like if it was any other conference above it, you'd be having a 3-team, 4-team discussion for the playoff this year. But because it's the American, because it's been downgraded again, unfortunately only 1 team will get in. I think they do play good football. Definitely not fully the top tier of other conference top tiers, but something definitely that is fun to watch and deserves to be talked about. It's you look at the past 7 weeks of college football, and it's very much in the NIL era, more so than it has been in the past. So it's not about what you've done for me lately; it's about what you're going to do for me right now and tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I mean, James Franklin is the best image of that. I mean, he's 3-0. They're number 2. Their national title conversations are the highest they've ever been. And 3 weeks later, he's looking for a job. Penn State is fully out of conference talk, playoff talk, just everything. I think this easiest, maybe cop out, but simplest way to talk about it is you just look at it week by week. I feel like there's been so many matchups this season. You look at the Florida State Virginia game. It was a weird game. It was on a Friday night. The next weekend for Florida State was Miami. Already looking ahead, and I feel like ever since that point, it's just all falling apart because then now they're overthinking. I think if you just look at it as you're playing a single game every single week, it does not matter who the next game is. Those teams, whoever can, Coach Saban, keep the rat poison out.
Yeah.
That's who is going to go far. And NIL makes it really tough. Media makes it really tough. So you got to really lock everyone in. I feel like, maybe this is easy target in a sense, but the media has been covering Colorado so much lately. Between Shador, Travis Hunter, and then obviously Dion. Well worth talking points. But when you have a program that doesn't have that much big exposure, big media attention, and you go from 0 to 100, it's really tough.
Yeah.
Really tough to keep it quiet and keep it focused week in and week out. And you'll get your wins still. I mean, you look at last weekend, Colorado may have finally figured something out underneath Caden Salter and won. But I mean, you have a guy like Travis Hunter, pure athlete. Don't know if he deserved the Heisman. Definitely deserves some other awards.
Snap award.
But he did not know you were a Boise State fan. But still, nonetheless, you have just incredible that team was good.
Yeah,
That team was
for
good.
sure.
And I would say that they underperformed. I don't think that we should be the results that they have holding that team as high as we are. But still, that was a very good roster. They just were not able to perform because of all the media. So, long-winded way, bringing it back. Keep it quiet in the locker room. Go 1-0 every week. Shout out 2017 UCF. And I think those are the teams that are going to succeed. Possibly the best team in that regard is Vanderbilt. I think week in, week out, they have been the ones that have gone, we don't care about anyone. It's the team that is this weekend. I mean, Diego Pavia, fully focused on South Carolina, fully focused on Alabama. It is only those, and that that's all that they're focused on. Which is why I think at this point in time, Vanderbilt will find a way into the playoff just based on the remaining schedule. They'll be kind of that 9, 10, 11 team getting in there. I think that they do possibly best in the country at focusing on 1-0 every week. So the other 11 teams that can figure that out, there you go. That's your playoff. And then it just comes down to X's, O's, and being 6'6" on the offensive line. So we'll move into our predictions now for the week, and a little bit of a change in format just on our lineup of games. The first game this week will be the Pac-South game of the week. As Pat, you will once again be in attendance for OU versus South Carolina. The only reason that this game is on this list, but it could
get interesting.
Could invite some extra conversation after this game, which is very funny as we talked earlier about the South Carolina game from last week. But Oklahoma Also losing to Texas, a team that has, as many would say, like dead in the water. They start number one. They set the record for the fastest to get out of the top 25 from the number one spot. Yeah, but John Mateer returns last week after his hand surgery. Maybe you could say too early. Not playing the best defense this weekend, but a defense that could be confident and give him issues. Question of this game: does South Carolina figure out anything offensively against probably the toughest defense they'll face all season?
Yeah.
That's the question there. This game is at Williams-Brice. Pat, you're going to be there. Why don't you dive in?
I think, like you said, this does have the potential to get really interesting in the scenario where John Mateer is not at 100% and not playing to his full abilities. I think if South Carolina is able to turn the ball over or force Oklahoma to turn the ball over multiple times, yes, there's a pathway to victory there and an upset. But I think the difficult thing for South Carolina is going to be moving the ball against this Oklahoma defense. This is a defense that likes to bring a lot of pressure. That's kind of Brett Venables' key signature thing. And this is an offensive line that at some positions is down to its second and third string players. So if you can't establish a run game, if you can't do what Texas did last week and get that quick game going, take a little bit of pressure off of the quarterback and off of the rush by running screens instead of maybe running the ball up the gut or having these longer developing plays, you've got a shot. I don't think Oklahoma is this invincible force or really just head and shoulders above team this year. That being said, I think because of those offensive line questions, I think because John Mateer now has another full week of practice, kind of getting himself, up to game speed again under his belt. I think it's going to be close just because it is at Williams-Brice. The South Carolina team usually performs pretty well in conference play at home, but I'm still going to go with the Sooners here.
Okay. I mean, I mentioned it in the preview for this game. OU has probably the best defense South Carolina will face all year. If South Carolina can figure out how to move the ball in this game, they can figure out how to do it the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
They're 3-3. Last season, they were 3-3. I'm not saying this is the same football team by any means, but there was not very much optimism in the year last year. I don't believe it was 3-3 going into Norman. I believe it was 4-3, but South Carolina goes in, and they punched Oklahoma in the mouth, and not on offense. They did go down the field and score a touchdown quickly, but you had, I believe, a scoop and score and a pick six, and it was 21-0 with 8 minutes remaining in the first quarter. The game was over before it started. I don't think that happens here, but South Carolina, their keys to victory has to be having a special teams or defensive touchdown or just getting that ball turned over a lot. They're going to need to force good field position for their offense. That being said, they're going to need to be reinventive. The offensive line coach got fired this past weekend, so we'll see if there's any improvement there, but they're already, tight. So, it's just you have what you have there. That being said, this skid that South Carolina's been on, the momentum, I think it goes one of two ways. Historically, Beamer has been able to get out of it for South Carolina.
Yeah.
But I think that even against a very good team, I think that then his seat gets hot after this game if he loses this, because then you go from 2-1 top 10 team to 3-4, nowhere near. Bowl game looks very scary. And maybe I've been talking to Melvin too much lately, but I'm going to go with South Carolina. Obviously, his pick of running the gauntlet did not happen. But I don't think that they're going to get skunked in the gauntlet either. I think this is the one that they take. John Mateer, I think he came back too early. I think that he's going to still struggle. throwing the football and the turnovers South Carolina will capitalize on, and then that's how they will win the game. It's going to be close, and more than likely, it's going to be ugly again. So, if you're a Gamecock fan, just watch the radio, listen to the radio. Todd will be yelling. So, give me South Carolina against all better judgment.
So what I'm hearing here, TJ, is that 9-3 is still on the table.
9-3 is firmly on the table.
Gotcha.
It's a folding table, but it's on the table. Our second game, we have Georgia Tech at Duke. Very, very fascinating game here. Georgia Tech exceeding expectations. Duke, after that Illinois game, has really brought it back. Or excuse me, after the Tulane game, whichever one. They're now sitting 4-2 either way. Undefeated in conference play and have looked good in all of those games. Georgia Tech is their biggest test so far. Georgia Tech surviving some scares, but then also playing some good football at the same time. What we like at Wally Wade? This is not the same Duke team playing a ranked team earlier in the season.
I agree. This one's been tough for me. I've been going back and forth on this because I bought both of these teams. Last week, you and I both bought Georgia Tech, and I think it was before the Cal game that I bought Duke. This is clearly the toughest game left on Georgia Tech's schedule. It's pretty smooth sailing after this, so theoretically speaking, they can still slip up here and make the ACC title game if things break their way. I think Manny Diaz is going to have the team prepared. They're coming off a bye. That offense has been humming. I mean, that's like a top 5, top 10 offense in the country this year with Darian Mensah back there. However, that defense has been prone to giving up big plays and explosive plays. Just look at the beginning of the NC State and the Cal games. Both of those games, NC State and Cal scored early, got out to leads. They just couldn't sustain it because Duke ultimately buckled down on defense. However, I think Georgia Tech's much more competent and much better on offense than both of those teams. So I think this is going to be a high-scoring back-and-forth affair. And ultimately, I think I'm going to have to go with the Jackets here, but I think it's going to be really close. I'm thinking probably like 3 to 7 point victory.
Yeah, I'm with. It's going to be close. I think this is going to be a really entertaining game. I think it's going to be one of those like 38-41 second half barn burners.
Mm-hmm.
I am concerned for the rest of the year in big games for Georgia Tech, like being the most likely ACC title game against Miami, depending on how everyone's season shapes.
Yeah.
Haynes King has been a workhorse for them, but he's been taking a beating. So they really need to make sure in some of these games that he is scripted in a way that is like less taxing on him. I mean, he will the team down the field, but also he can't will the team down the field to the point that his body is broken by week 10. So more of a cautionary warning to Georgia Tech, but I'm right there with you. Duke has played very good, really since the 5-minute mark of the fourth quarter against Tulane.
Mm-hmm.
That offense has been very good all season after that point. And I think that this game being at home, it falls into whoever the home team is. Georgia Tech, very good team. I like them to go 11-1, but I'm taking Duke to get the upset.
Okay, Bull City.
But they need this one. They need this one. They're on 2 losses right now. If they want to keep whatever possible playoff hopes that they have, they got to win this game.
For sure.
If they lose this game, they're outside looking in for the ACC title game. 3 losses with this schedule, you're definitely not in the playoffs. So this is a must-win for the big dreams of the season. Doesn't mean their season's over, but this is a must-win for them on that tier. Now, third Saturday, in October. Great game. Has been the last few years. Tennessee, Alabama. Kalen DeBoer probably permanently has the black hoodie on his body now, and but Tennessee's been playing good football this year. What do we like in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, I think Tennessee is good this year, especially on offense. Joey Aguilar has kind of seamlessly transitioned into that role, taking over for Nico. Granted, they weren't as great on offense last year. Under Nico as they were in previous years with Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker, but that offense is still humming. You know what you're going to get from Josh Heupel. It's going to be up tempo. It's going to be spread out. You're going to have a pretty solid run game, but you're also going to see a lot of quick game, taking shots, things like that. Bama, like you said, I think Kalen's got that permanently hung in his closet for Saturdays from now on. I think the Bama fan base might nuke Neyland if he shows up and that's not on. Um, so what I'm really looking for here is, can Ty Simpson do it again? He's been playing really good football since that Florida State game. He played well against Missouri, not great. So is he going to step it up in a huge rivalry game against an opponent that is very good? I think Tennessee's more well-rounded than Missouri is. However, I think Missouri's defense is better than Tennessee's defense. So with that being said, I think Bama's unconscious right now. I think they're trying to prove to everybody that the Florida State game was a fluke. Wipe it from your memory. I like Bama to win this one, and I like them to put up a decent amount of points here because of the defensive struggles that Tennessee has shown. They gave up a lot of points to Mississippi State. They gave up a lot of points to Arkansas. So I think Bama's going to win, and I think they're going to be having some fun with this one.
Wow. Okay. I really like Tennessee, and that almost immediately gives my pick away. But the Tide rolls here. This is exactly the Alabama team I thought they were going to be going into the season. I was just shocked by the Florida State game. I wasn't high on Florida State by any means going into the year. I thought this was kind of the year that Bama would reclaim their like title at the top, and then it was like, oh, it's a little shaky. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
After the Florida State game, they were able to kind of recoup. They go to Sanford Stadium. They get a big win against Georgia. And, I mean, they've just continued to build and build and build. And I really like this Tennessee team. Do not get me wrong. But, I mean, now with, what would be another loss here, Tennessee, unfortunately, is going to be outside looking in on the season. I mean, and this just goes to show just how deep the SEC is. I think if Tennessee is an ACC team, they are straight through to the ACC title game. They're playing Miami, and it's just a matter of who's the number one seed in the country, pretty much. But I like the Tide, and I like the Tide by 2 touchdowns here. I think that they're just really going to get it done. Tuscaloosa is going to be rocking. Switching gears, we're out of the Southeast for our only non-Southeast pick. Traditional rivalry here. Don't see it as much these days, I feel like. Southern Cal, Notre Dame. This is going to be in South Bend. What do we like here? Southern Cal makes this flight almost every week.
Yeah, USC is definitely racking up the air miles on their athletic department Amex card. I think this is going to be a really fun game. I think Notre Dame's sort of figured out the defensive problems that plagued them earlier in the year. Not so much against Miami. They still kept that pretty close, but definitely against Texas A&M. Sort of the same story every year that we see under Marcus Freeman. Start a little bit slow in late August, September, and as we turn the calendar to October, you get really, really strong play starting to emerge. Jeremiah Love. The Notre Dame receivers have been a little bit disappointing this year, but I still think that they're a deeper group than Notre Dame's had in the past. USC is explosive on offense. That receiving core is awesome to watch. Mekhi Lemon is insane. Jaden Mayava has been really, really good since getting thrust into the starting role. I think we're going to see like a classic USC Notre Dame game. I'm not thinking like Bush push levels classic, but it's going to be one of those back and forths, a lot of tense emotions, we'll say, between both sides. However, could probably guess based on my personal allegiances. I'm going with the Irish in this one, but I think it's going to be a close game. I think Lincoln's going to have a really good game plan ready. I just trust that this Notre Dame defense has taken those strides that it seems like they've taken, and I think they'll be able to gut out a really important victory here. They have to win this game if they're going to make the playoff.
Indeed, yeah. This would be loss number 3 on a schedule that has really like lost its power throughout. I mean, the 2 losses being against 2 current top 5 teams. But there's not a whole lot of strength outside of that. You have a team like Boise State who made the playoffs last year, nowhere near the same team that they were. But yeah, I mean, must win for Notre Dame. Just almost as much of a must win for Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley doesn't have very many big wins at Southern Cal. It seemed like every time, like a couple years ago, Southern Cal was very good. Caleb Williams at quarterback. I'll say Caleb Love, and I was like, hang on. Caleb Williams at quarterback for the Trojans, and every single big game that they had, Utah, Washington, they just laid an egg. That's now been a few years and still kind of same situation, except not as good of a team that they have. So they really need to get a statement game. I think the program is still fine. They're trending better than what I thought they would be at right now. I mean, record's about the same, but they've looked better doing so, you could say.
Yeah.
That being said, though, it's Notre Dame has been doing this past couple years where they might drop one early in the season. You're like, Notre Dame's got nothing. They're out. There's just whatever. Last year it was Northern Illinois. This year it was 2 top 5 teams, and one of them was on the road. They lost by 1. This team's good, and people just are not talking about it because there's 2 losses. So I like Notre Dame here. I think Southern Cal, as a program, will kind of just stay where they are right now, which is not good if you're in Lincoln Riley. You really need to bring the trophies back to LA.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Southern Cal might also be looking for a coach. That's a guy who has a very large buyout. So we will see how he can finish the year, but I like the Irish. Now, our final game of the week, once again, we are matching what would be our Pac South game if no one was attending. Ole Miss and Georgia. Ole Miss, very shocking last weekend. A very, very close game to Washington State, who has looked
really bad.
All but dead, pretty much, all season. In Georgia, who has had some really tough games, losing Alabama at home. Auburn, you squeak through. You can't talk to anyone in those 2 states without bringing up referees because of that game. But this is a very intriguing matchup. I believe Austin Simmons sounds like he is kind of back, but I would be shocked if Trinidad is not still labeled the starter at least one more week. We'll see what kind of happens in this game. But yeah, real interesting. Sanford Stadium, once again, the site of this matchup. I feel like Georgia needs this. Ole Miss has time. Lane Kiffin would like the win, obviously. But Georgia, at this point in the season, I would have to say they need this. Who is your big game pick?
Yeah, I think I agree with your point that Georgia definitely needs this in terms of putting that statement out there that they are still one of the top teams in the country. You struggle against Alabama with discipline issues and offense issues and lose that game. Come back, beat a crappy Kentucky team, yeah, whatever. And then, I mean, kudos to Kirby and that staff for adjusting at halftime, but they looked really, really bad in the first half against Auburn in a huge rivalry game. So I think this weekend, there's going to be a lot of questions being asked. Is this the team that we thought it was coming into the year? Is Gunnar Stockton going to be able to take that step during the season to really turn them into a true contender? Because we know the defense is good, but is that offense going to step it up? Nate Frazier's a really good running back, but you can't just run the ball every snap against a good SEC defense. I don't know. Ole Miss, they worried me a lot last week with that performance. I do still think that it's Trinidad's job until he proves otherwise. You kind of got to keep riding the hot hand and what got you here. If you're Lane Kiffin, but I don't know. Like, is this Ole Miss team the team that we saw struggle with Arkansas and we saw struggle with Washington State, or is this the team that, yeah, it was a close game score wise, but felt like you were in control against LSU for most of that game? I think that's a big question for them coming into this game. I'm leaning more. I think they're kind of the team that we saw against Arkansas and the team that we saw against Washington State last weekend. So I think not only are the Dogs going to win this weekend, but I think it's going to be a difficult end to the season for Ole Miss and company. And I think we're set up for a really fun Egg Bowl if Ole Miss is sitting at, let's say, 2 losses against a scrappy Mississippi State team.
Wow. Okay. Very, very interesting there. Yeah, I mean, Ole Miss, I've been a fan of them throughout the season, but obviously, if you want to go microcosm by microcosm, like you do have some interesting points
Mm-hmm.
there. Like we discussed the South Carolina LSU game, how ugly that was, and really just neither team wanted to win that game. Ole Miss gets a scrappy 5-point win in that one. So then you get more games, you start thinking about it, looking at it, and go, what was that game really? I mean, we thought it was two really good teams playing each other.
Yeah.
Is it really just two evenly matched, good teams? Don't get me wrong, but not the caliber that we thought we were looking at originally. That's kind of the question, and I think Lane probably knows that going in. The best game that they have on their schedule that they've won is Tulane. If Ole Miss gets through this one, they have Oklahoma again next weekend, and then by the standard of the season, a decent end for them. You have South Carolina at home, Citadel, Florida, and then a trip to Starkville for the Egg Bowl, which could be for a playoff game depending on how these next 2 games go. That being said, Lane knows what this game is. He knows how to rile the team up, and I think it actually helps that this game is on the road for Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia needs this one, don't get me wrong, but they still have enough at the end of their season to get them through. They have a non-conference game against Georgia Tech, who will very likely be in the top 10 during that game, who could be that late season resume booster that Georgia needs. You don't want to plan for that, but you have that. But I like Lane. I can't go with the sweep of home teams. I like Ole Miss.
Wow.
Lane's going to rile the boys up. And they're going to get the win at Samford. And then, alarm bells will be punched in Georgia, but I think it'll be fine. They're still going to be in that playoff picture.
For sure.
Just not the Georgia guarantee that we've seen
Mm-hmm.
the last couple years. All right. So we're splitting the Georgia Tech and Duke game and the OU South Carolina game.
I was going to say, I kind of like that we kept it a little diverse this week.
Lot more splits, I feel like, than typical weeks. So should be interesting. Final question for you. Over or under 1.5 coaches fired on Sunday?
I'm gonna go over.
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 Do
Um,
you want do you want to make a prediction on anyone, or you just want to keep it over?
I'm just gonna keep it vague and say over. I think we'll probably see a lower tier job open up, and I think one of the bigger positions will open up as well.
Okay. I am also going over, and I am confirming one thing before I will name names. Um, yes. Um, I believe the state of Florida may be having a rough Sunday. Um, I like Mississippi State this weekend against Florida. I think Billy Napier will be gone, and this one is less of a guarantee because Florida State should win this game. They're playing a very bad Stanford team,
Very bad.
but if you lose that game, with how college football has been this year and just how open the college coaching market is, you gotta get in there and join
Yeah.
it. If you're Florida State, I think you want to give yourself a chance. So, all right, both of us are going over. The only teams that might have a coach by the end of this season will be the playoff teams. That's not a guarantee. Um, so, all right. Well, another great week, great conversation. We will be back again next week to kind of recover everything. Baseball talk, playoff, MLS. It's a great time of year, and we'll see who survives it. So, until next week, everyone, thanks for tuning in.